Welcome to Demolition Success Secrets, the podcast that's changing the game for demolition businesses everywhere. Ever wondered how a wrecking ball wielding industry can leverage digital marketing to dominate their market? Well, we've got the blueprints, strategies, expert guests, and more to show you how. Stay tuned, because we're about to blast through the barriers of your business.
Welcome, guys. We have an awesome guest who has been in the biz for many years now. Now, he's in a few businesses. He is beyond demolition. He is Dennis. Welcome, Dennis. Glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, Jalen. I appreciate it. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us how you got involved and what you guys are doing from day to day.
Sure. So basically, my background has been in excavating and demolition for, 25 plus years. Not to date myself there, but a long time. And we did everything from, concrete demolition, interior strip outs, high rises, malls, schools, some houses, but, we prefer not to do houses. Mostly we, wanted the bigger things. And then it kind of evolved into making our own expanding grout. Like I was a member of the board of directors for the NDA, the National Demolition Association, and through that, my role was to go around the convention and make sure the exhibitors, had everything that they needed and they're happy. And years ago, I did just that and came across a company that was making expanding grout, and then I started using it and then selling it. And I also then, many years later, decided to make my own formula, which I did. So I found a lab and a doctor of science and a biochemical engineer and a chemist, and we created my own formula. And now we have a product called RockX, which is the best expanding grout. That was my goal when I set out to do this, was to make it faster and stronger and the best that I could make. And we've done that. So that's kind of what we have, that, as well as RockX, which is an explosive. It's a deflagrating cartridge, so it's safer and easier to use than dynamite and the high explosives. So basically on the day-to-day, we take on jobs that are difficult. We're always working in sensitive areas where you can't blast, or it's tough to take these things out. And we will either supply the product or come and do the job, or we will supply the product and rent the tools and show people how to do it themselves.
That's really cool. So you kind of scratched your own itch. You started maybe similar to some of our audience members, doing the work, leading your team, doing the work, that kind of thing. And then you said, hey, there needs to be better products. And that's where you guys really innovated.
Yeah, I started with nothing, actually, honestly, like years and years ago. I just thought, hey, let's make a few bucks. What do I do, right? And you just get going, and you take one step at a time. And then, I had a Harley when I was young, and then I had kids, and I thought, okay, well, I guess it's time to sell the bike and get more serious about life. And I used the money from the bike to put a down payment on my first excavator. And
wow.
Got that going. And it was many, many days of like, how am I going to make the phone ring, and then I would make up door hangers and just go walk around subdivisions and, knock on doors and say, hey, I see your yard's not finished yet, got any new subdivisions, and, you want a price to put in the level it off and put in some soil or grass or whatever, and did that. And I just, I had really high payments on the machine over a short term, and I just focused on it and made it work. And then I bought a second machine and a third machine and then a dump truck and so on, and did that. And then after that, I did that for probably a couple of years, and then I just started getting into demolition more, and I really just enjoyed the demo more than excavating.
Okay, gotcha. Now, what do you recommend or see out there in the world for excavation relative to demolition companies? Because we do have land clearing, site prep, demo, excavation, all kinds of listeners. Do you have maybe a day-to-day preferred focus of work?
Yeah, I would suggest that you pick one. And for us, the work that we do is very, very specialized, and there's not a lot of competition, which means you get to charge more money.
Sure.
And there's pros and cons to being specialized. The pros are you make more money, but the cons are that you don't work as often. There's not as many jobs. So what I think is when people start to do land clearing, excavating, demolition, rubbish removal, whatever, all together, that's usually when somebody's just getting started and you're not focused on just one of the things. So I would suggest focus on what you really like and do the other things kind of, as a general way to grow the business, because you can keep busy, but just keep on the path of what you really enjoy, what you're passionate about, follow that and just really get to be the best that you can be.
Yeah, be a specialist. I always say, there's steak restaurants and there's diners. While I do love diners, I think a lot of people love diners, but there's being a generalist, aka a diner, and there's being an expert, niche focused
Yeah.
type of person where it's like, hey, we really focus on attracting the steak customers. Yes, we can help you from a diner perspective, but we're not maybe chasing the diner perspective as much as we are being that steak restaurant that, yeah, you might spend $300 at the steak restaurant while the diner only costs $40, but that's a benefit to you. So can you kind of give some insight to the audience as, what projects you guys have enjoyed doing and how you've transcended, I heard, to the bigger type of things? We do have audience members who they're really focused on, houses and smaller stuff. How does that evolve, or should it evolve for some of our listeners?
That's a great question. And I think it's a personal choice. Like when we were really heavy into demo, we had, 10, 12 jobs on the go at a time. We had $1 million plus in receivables. And it sucked. Like, to be honest, you're always chasing money. You're always in court with the guys that don't pay you. And you're always faced with the landfill bills, the fuel bills, the insurance, the payroll. And you got to watch what you wish for, right? So bigger isn't always better. Like if you look at it in a way, like what I look at is, how do you make money? The bigger your company, the more headaches you're going to have. The smaller your company, the less money you're going to make. But once you start to look at, like, how do I make what I need, and how do I enjoy the growth of my company, right?
Right.
So if you take something and kind of pick it apart. Say you take disposal as an industry. You're going to just start to separate from the guy that's doing it all, doing the excavating, the demo, the disposal, and you just decide, okay, I just want to do disposal. How do you make the most money in disposal, right? Like where do you save money? Is it in making your own bins? Is it buying your bins used and painting them, the branding? Maybe you get some subcontractors to work with you. Maybe your expertise is really in marketing. Maybe your role is to really, or hire somebody else to work alongside you. But how do you really grow that, right? You want to kind of analyze it and say, okay, this is how I'm making money. And then how do you just make the phone ring more?
Interesting. Yeah. We wonder that sometimes too. Between the old school type of companies and the new school companies, in theory, the new school companies are embracing marketing through various means, and the old school maybe are more referral based. How does someone like yourself, who has seen it from decades of experience, only two, not don't want to age you,
yeah, I don't need any help there.
respected decades, while not too many, also enough to be very, very credible. How do you see the industry going from the old school and the new school, and how could we have old school and new school hybrid to really do the best possible, from the getting of clients to the serving of clients, would you say?
Well, that's also a great question. And for me, that's exactly what I do. I look at just that. There's so much to be said for the old school way.
Oh, yeah.
But the old school way has a shelf life, right? Pretty soon, it's not even going to be in existence. It's going to be in the past. It's going to be history. So how do you bridge that gap between old school and the new way? And I believe it's just to merge both. Like, we have a marketing team that is very, very good. And I would say hire people, like if you think you know everything about a certain thing, that's fantastic, and hire somebody better, or in a certain field. I mean, that's why you hire a lawyer. That's why you hire an accountant, and hire a marketing manager. Hire a CFO. Like whatever you need to allow yourself to be the entrepreneur and focus on your vision. Do that. I would, again, it's just kind of the money in and the money out. It's just like if you just keep bringing money in, you just keep reinvesting it in your company, and the company will take care of you.
Yeah. And how would you say to someone who's maybe just starting, smaller and medium, to be able to afford that ability? Obviously, like an accountant, I would imagine we would say you have them as an external company at first, and then as you grow bigger and bigger, you want to take that in-house.
Yeah.
For marketing, perhaps you would have external and then grow that out, mature it, and then bring someone in-house. How did you manage to do that? How did you, other than a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears and years of effort, how could you recommend to these smaller, medium, maybe newer companies to be able to make that gap less of a time, doing it safely as well?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it really matters if you bring your marketing team in-house or have it externally, or maybe same with accountant or a lawyer.
Okay.
I think it's really the right fit, more so than the right fit, meaning the right people for the right amount of money that you want to spend. Like you really got to just drive the bus, right? You don't want to be a passenger. You want to get more passengers behind you, but you want to keep driving, right?
I've never heard that expression. That's pretty good.
Yeah, because you're the guy that's leading the way, or girl, whichever case may be. And there's a million people out there that you could hire or that you could work with, but it's really about the money creates the roadway, right? So the more money that you bring in, the more options that you have, the more things that you can do with it.
Okay. So and I would imagine
the bridging the gap is really just in this day and age, you really have to have both. It always, I think, in my opinion, starts with a website, starts with the marketing on the social platforms. It also goes back to, we've had great success with our branding. I spent a lot of money doing our branding with a really good company, and it's made a big difference. We still go driving around, believe it or not, and knocking on doors. Like we'll see an excavation with rock. We'll pull in and say, here's my card. If you want to do some with that rock. We still do cold calling, and
wow,
you get a lot of no's and some hang-ups on you, but some yeses,
That's cool. So you always stay hungry. Just stay hungry, hit milestones.
Yeah. And I had a girl in the office calling, like that was part of her job in the morning. She would make cold calls. And I remember I came in one day and she was like, she had such a bad morning of it. Like people were hanging up on her and everybody was like, oh, yeah, get lost. And one call she made, the guy says, oh, are you cold calling me? And she goes, well, yeah. And he goes, well, that's just the best thing. I actually just need that right now.
Cool. Wow.
So, and that turned out to be like a really great job in Whistler. We had our guys up there. We took out some concrete slab that was 7 inches thick, but it had 5 live electrical lines going through it, and they couldn't disconnect them. So we had to carefully kind of cut it and then chip out around the electrical lines, and then excavate into a pit so they could repair a plumbing problem. But that was like a $10,000 job. So just from her persistence, made a difference.
Yeah. And did that stick with her long term? Because you were saying she had such a tough morning, and then boom, those wins, be it deals, be it someone making a cold call, from my world, you kind of put that on your board and go, all right, this is still viable. Let's keep sticking through this.
Yeah, for sure. It does. And it also earned her a nice commission on the sale. And, we also have our trucks all branded, and we've had it where, I'll get a call and the guy will say, oh, I saw your truck and I wrote down the phone number. I need you. So, you go through all these times where you're wondering, like, oh man, was it worth it to spend the money on wrapping the truck, right? Or was it worth spending the money on Google ads, or was it worth doing whatever you did? But collectively it works, right? And it's the more people see you and the more you get out there, that's really, I think, how you grow. But I believe it's really the old school ways. You bring, to the table a good solid work ethic. You show up on time. You just do what you say you're going to do. It's like the simple basics like that. Have integrity around yourself and what you do. And that's, what a lot of the complaints are that we hear out there is people just don't care, or they don't show up, or they're late, or things like that. And it's really that's how you build a reputation, right?
Yeah, they don't even answer their phone in certain cases.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've had that too. Like, people, answer your phone. Like, okay, yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah, set up a system, or like you were referring to earlier, like someone was making outbound cold calls. Perhaps you could have someone who helps you as you're growing and scaling. I mean, a lot of our audience, I would say they have an established business, but frankly, we talk to some of these people, or attempt to, where we reach out, and yeah, there are no systems. They'll pick up the phone sporadically, and you wonder, just like, man, there are multi-million-dollar deals that can come to their line sometimes, and because they're not attentive, simply because they didn't set up good systems, like literally just saying, from this time to this time, I will not be on a work site. That is business time.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the morning every day, or maybe it's during lunchtime or at the end of the day, whatever that looks like. Really being keen on picking up the phone, being able to respond with systems of voicemails or texts or emails when you can't do it, and kind of time blocking, so that way you could be attentive to the field, you could be attentive to your team, you could really kind of, be attentive to your clients, all that. What would you say encapsulates the industry of the good and bad? We hear so many times that companies, they boom and bust. We hear many a times that there are maybe not the best individuals out in the space. How can the audience not fall into those traps? I know we just kind of touched on that to an extent, but maybe you could give us some extra wisdom on how to not be the bad demo company, or be the bad land clearing, or any of that stuff.
I would say, like, safety is very important. You want to treat that seriously. Some reactiveness on the part of, like, learning what the regulations are, knowing what you have to do, doing your safety meetings. That aspect is a requirement, these days. You can't avoid that. But I think a big part of what makes people fail in this business is the capital cost of the equipment is very high. And it's very easy for people to get overextended. So my philosophy has been a simple one, but it's worked for me. And that's, I kind of mix up renting with buying used. I never buy new.
Okay.
But it's basically, you see a goal or a vision that you want to tackle, and you just make it happen. So if you don't have anything, equipment wise that you need, go rent it. And you'll make money on the rental. You won't make as much money on the renting, but you're going to get a good solid piece of equipment. It's going to not break down. You're going to pay for it. Then you just send it back when you're finished with it, right? And you do that for a while until you save up some money, and you take the money and then you go buy a used one. Whatever it is, if it's an excavator, a bobcat, a dump truck, buy the used one and maintain it. And that used one, you'll pay that back. But my philosophy and my feeling about it is just, buy what you can write a check for.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't agree with that. Like, a lot of people say, oh, I can lease it. I'm going to buy the brand new truck because it's a lease. I can write it off. And that's a bunch of BS. There's no free lunch. As my dad used to say, there's no free lunch. Yeah, sure. You can write it off, but the only time you're writing it off is when you would otherwise spend that money in taxes because you made a profit. Where if you're not making the profit, like, the lease isn't helping you, right? Like, what helps you is solid cash.
Yeah, running a wise business.
Yeah, if you got cash in the bank, you're going to survive everything, right? It's what happens typically is wintertime comes, work slows down, and the payments don't, and the bills don't. The overhead carries on, month after month after month, whether
Right.
your income does whatever, right? So that's my advice. That's the way that I've done it is you try to just buy things used, run it. When you need something that you don't have, then you just rent it. But rent it with the idea of like, hey, I'm going to buy this, or I'm going to make my money that I can off the rental, but then I'm going to start to own these assets, and then you just start to acquire more and more assets. And once you own assets, it's kind of like a podcast. Once you get a podcast going, you might have 10 episodes or 20 episodes, but then when you're recording your 80th or your 100th episode, those other 80 or whatever 95s already exist, right? So you're always going to be building it. It's the same with the company. It's the same with assets, right? Once you buy, assets, sure, they break down or they may need replaced, but once you buy an excavator or a bobcat or whatever you're going to buy, you have that. It's going to continue to make you money, right?
Yeah, it's a compounding effect of sorts.
Yeah, exactly. That compounds, and then that balloon that you're building kind of keeps blowing up and blowing up and blowing up, and then all those things are making you money.
Do you have any wisdom? You had mentioned, being able to pay cash or pay with a check. Do you, because you're adamant, I buy used, I rent, I buy used, that kind of thing. Are you buying equipment with cash, or are you open to financing, or it's just one way or the other? Do you ever have a side on that?
I've done both, like I've had some old excavators that I traded in for one new one, and I did that on a way of just getting the lowest payment possible. I did it at a time where the dealer had 0 interest, and I got that over the longest term possible. And I did that on a way of just, I'm going to make the smallest payment per month, and I'm going to make that machine make as much income as I can per month. And that's my money is whatever I earn over and above the payment, right?
Okay, that's super cool. Some people are very Dave Ramsey about it, and they're like, we just buy it cash. We don't even consider financing. And I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes,
yeah. No, I think mix it up. Like the whole key is that at the end of the day, like we said, you're just driving the bus. So whatever works for you, right? I mean, there is definitely something to be said for, hey, I'm going to hop in the morning and turn the key, and I don't have to think about it. It's going to fire up and run, and I'm going to go to work.
Okay. How has inflation and wars and political things affected the business maybe over the last few years? Doesn't have to be over the last 2 years, but could be over the last 6 years, last 4 years. Has the business gotten, noticeably harder? Have you seen for yourself and your peers?
No, I think it's gotten better.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think for us it's gotten better because it's with inflation, and this is something that I've just kind of taken on myself, and it's like, everything's going up, like the cost of groceries, the cost of fuel, definitely cost of insurance, everything's gone up.
Oh yeah.
And it's just kind of like been accepted 100% across the board by everybody unilaterally, I think, in the country. So when they're in the state of mind of like, oh, hey, everything's going to cost me more, why wouldn't your demo cost you more?
Sure.
Or why wouldn't your excavation cost you more? So it's kind of opened up a time to charge more money.
Okay.
And I think this is where I kind of like the mid-sized jobs better than the big jobs.
Okay.
Because you're dealing with a person, instead of like a government agency or a corporation, where it's just based on bids. When you're dealing with a person, you can have a more open conversation. Like you can say, like, what did you have in mind for a budget? Or what if we take a little off here? What if we do that? Like what's important to you? And I think it's really like through having those conversations that things happen. And we really don't bid jobs. We just work hourly, but we will do estimates. So what we do is we have them send us pictures and some dimensions of what they're wanting to take out. And from that we'll say, okay, well, based on what I see in your pictures, it's probably like 2 to 3 days or 1 to 2 weeks. We'll give them an idea, because I don't expect anybody to write me a blank check and just say, show up and charge me whatever you want. So you want to, be transparent with them so they have an understanding of what to expect. But yeah, it's a lot, I think, easier now, because the way the cost of housing is going, everything is up there. And now compared to the old days, 10 years ago, houses were, a fraction of what they are now. So now people are realizing, like, hey, I have a house where it's got all rock in the basement. It's going to cost me $50,000 or $100,000 to remove this rock. But then once I've done that, I can build a whole new floor, a whole new basement suite, or an in-law suite, whatever we want to put, or maybe they want to put a gym or a ski storage or mountain bike storage room, whatever they want to do. But they can use that unusable space to create something great. Like Ryan Texas, that built the pool there, like he was a firefighter. We were talking about this earlier, and on his 4 days off, he builds swimming pools. So he's rented a little mini excavator. He was digging out the dirt for the pool, and a couple of feet down, he found out it was all rock. So then he called me, and he just, did the same, sent us pictures, and I just showed him, did a little drill pattern for him, said, here, this is how you drill your holes, 1.5 inch holes, foot apart, take our grout, mix it with water, pour it in, and it breaks the rock. He did that, and then he was just, building a pool. Same, we're doing the job in West Van too, West Vancouver here in BC. This guy went in and did all these big retaining walls to support the deep end of the pool, and then started excavating for the pool itself, and then found out it was all a mountainside of rock. Like the whole pool area was rock, and it was a big pool, like 20 by 40 pool with a 10-foot deep end.
Wow.
So we actually broke all of that rock out and then created a space for his pool.
That's cool. Do you have any thoughts on where the business will be for yourself? I know prior to us getting ready for the podcast, we were talking about kind of your expansion plans. Do you want to kind of give our audience some insights there, and maybe some of the audience would love to partake how they can or be of assistance in your business growth?
For sure, yeah. So what we have developed is what we call a smart can. So a smart can is like a small 10-foot by 10-foot shipping container, which is all branded, our colors and our name on it. And we have them custom outfitted with all the stands and shelves and everything for our drills and jackhammers. And they have cameras and GPS and everything on them. And we'll set up a container in a location. Like right now, we're setting up Ontario. So we've done a few jobs in Ontario. And we're doing a job starting in the beginning of the year in New York. And we've got a couple more lined up after that. So our idea is to set up like a strategic partner, which could be a person that has a small company that maybe they do, excavating or demo or whatever they do, but they're familiar with the machines and stuff, or have access to like a small crew or some equipment if they need to. And we'll set them up, we'll provide all the equipment, and they can basically run it. So it'll add on to what business they currently have. And we just kind of will grow like that. And we do a lot of marketing and advertising now. And, we get calls in all kinds of places, like from Colorado to California. And we're dealing with other contractors now, and we're supplying the product. And it also opens up an opportunity where a lot of people just say, hey, can you come and do it? So we want to put in place people that we can work together with as a part of our team.
Okay. And what's a good qualification for them? Is there certain years of experience, a certain annual rev, team size, anything like that?
It doesn't really matter too much. I mean, if somebody that's got, like experience with the equipment, they could have, maybe 2 or 3 guys to 10 or 20 guys, that kind of a thing. But somebody that's got maybe a bit of a yard space or is in a similar kind of industry, whether it be landscaping or excavating, mini excavating, demolition work, somebody's familiar with, trucks as well as an asset, because a lot of the times people will want us to haul away the rocks too. So we'll go in and do the rock breaking, and then load them out and get rid of them at the same time.
Okay, cool. And I know we talked earlier, it's not necessarily, a franchise, it's really, partnership and things of that nature. Are there any sort of metrics that a potential partner with you guys could maybe foresee or expect to be added to their core business? I know it varies, but any sort of metrics that you guys have in mind they could be interested in or maybe enticed by?
Yeah, so we have rate sheets that we could provide if somebody's interested. They're welcome to call and have a conversation about it, and then we just pay a percentage of what we charge to them for managing everything. So you would be able to make a more money than you would typically make, and you would just look after that like small crew, and everything that we have is very modular and portable. So it's like you just have a high-ab truck come in and pick up the container, plunk it on the site, or the small jobs you just show up with the truck and the drills, drill it, use an air compressor, and pour our grout, or we train you on the explosive side of it as well if you wanted to do that end of it, and just kind of grow it from there.
Okay, awesome. And any kind of shout outs for websites or phone numbers you care to share for your core business or any of your product-based business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So our website is rockbusters.com, and our number is 604-690-0100, 690-0100.
Okay. Gotcha. And that can help from a service as well as the product or any differentiation?
Yeah, whatever you like. So we provide a service or we provide the product. So a lot of guys that are doing demo, I mean, a lot of times even saw cutters, they struggle with big, ugly masses of concrete, where our methods are you drill holes, you pour the grout, or you can use explosives if you got the room. And it's faster and it saves you time and money. So it's really just kind of showing people or teaching them how to do it, right? It's not difficult, but it's not kind of the mainstream way yet. It's catching on, but it's not mainstream yet.
Yeah, sounds innovative. It sounds like the like you said, almost the best way to do it. Obviously, you're not in the business of creating a worse way to do it, but
exactly. I drive by sites sometimes, and you'll see like they'll have like an 80-ton crane holding a concrete panel where the guy's cutting it free, and then you're thinking, man, like that's whatever $300-400 an hour, where the guy could have just drilled holes and broken it up into small pieces and then cut off the last 6-inch strip instead of trying to hold on to this with a crane costing thousands of dollars. It's going to be like at least a couple thousand or maybe $3,000 or $5,000 bill for the crane, where you can avoid that. And even when you get into jobs like crane bases, like big, thick, ugly, heavily reinforced concrete, that's where people struggle, and this is where we really shine. We've got large demolition companies that use our product for bridge abutments and things like that. And we've done jobs like we did a concrete breaking job in the Fraser River, 120 feet underwater. And we used our hydraulic splitters for that. And we worked with a team of 20 divers, and it was so deep that the divers could only be down there for 20 minutes at a time. So we worked with all of them. We had one guy from our company on the barge, and then we just, showed them how to do it. They just dived down, and we had a big 300-ton crane lowering down our little 100-pound splitter, and the diver, inserted it into the hole underwater and turned it on and broke the concrete. So we took out 14 inches of concrete, but in a difficult spot.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of any underwater work on the podcast so far. We've heard some arena skyscrapers. Do you have any interesting jobs, hospitals? I could think of so many things, retirement homes. Do you have any interesting on-land jobs that have been mind-blowing or just massive from a scope or size perspective that you guys can think of?
Yeah, the Grand Canyon, we did some rock breaking in the bottom of the canyon. There's, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's the Phantom Ranch down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And they have a wastewater treatment plant. And the treatment plant was built around the 1900s, so it's kind of at the end of its capacity. So there's a company from California that came in to do the new trenching and installation of the pipe and some new tanks and things. And they're not allowed to blast in the canyon. And so we went there, they bought the product from us, our grout, and then they bought the drills and stuff from us. And I went down there as a consultant to just help show them how to do it and get them going. But what was very cool is everything had to be helicoptered in. So they had the helicopter in the excavator. So they had a little Cat 305, and then the Bobcat and the screening plant and an air compressor, and all of our grout got helicoptered in.
Cool.
And us as well. And we actually stayed at the bottom of the canyon in the ranger station there. And we had to work alongside of an archaeologist, and it's all these kind of weird things that are fun, right? Like, not always you have to work with an archaeologist because they're watching out if you ever, if you dig up any bones or any ancient artifacts or whatever, right? And you're just trying to dig a trench, or our role was to break the rock or boulders as they showed up. So that's what we were training them how to do it. That was cool. That was very cool,
Yeah, that's awesome. How about any skyscrapers, arenas, extra big projects that come to mind?
Yeah, there's a couple. So we did one in the VGH hospital, Vancouver General Hospital. It was 17 stories, and we had to strip out every floor of the hospital. So what we did was, the elevator becomes your best friend, right? Everything that gets stripped out of every floor needs to go down through that elevator and into the bins. So, we came up with the plastic fish totes, if you're familiar with that. So we would use those. They're like 3x4, 4x4 plastic, 3 feet high. So we would use those for all the rubble. And then we had a forklift that we put a rotator on. So what we would do is we would use an electric pallet jack to move the totes through the floors, every floor, and then put them into the elevator. And then the elevator would take them down to the main floor, and we would have another pallet jack take them out and leave them outside. And then our forklift with the rotator would grab them and flip them upside down and dump them in the bin.
That is cool. Yeah, that's efficiency right there.
So it's just kind of bringing it all together and the efficiency. How do you make things run smooth? And then we had this other job in the Seymour River. They had 50,000 cubic meters slide in the middle of the night one December a few years ago, and the Seymour River has a fish hatchery up above where the landslide was, so it was blocking the river completely. The salmon couldn't spawn up to the fish hatchery, and they were losing like thousands and thousands of fish as a result. So we went in there and we drilled and blasted all of the rock that was in the way. So it kind of started off like a few small selected ones, and again working with engineers and hydrologists, things like that, to kind of do their part of the water flow. And the idea was to break it up in a way that in the summer months the water levels drop down, but in the winter months when they have all the rain, they crank up. So the idea was to break them up into small enough pieces where in the winter the high flow of water would flush them down the river. So we blasted out a lot of the rocks, and then some rock was actually huge. There was one in particular that was the size of about a 3-story house, and it was sitting kind of precariously, so it had to be shot in one shot. And you're working for the city. There was like 6 different stakeholders between Metro Vancouver, the local and federal governments, and you're working really, call it in a park area, because you've got hikers all around you. You've got a bridge going across where people cross a few 100 feet up, so you want to make sure that everything goes right. And that was a bit of a challenge, but at the end of the day it got done.
3 stories, man. That's big.
There's a lot of rock.
Whew. That's cool. All right. Well, I guess some other questions, just being that you have such a breadth of experience, and you had mentioned, suing people to get paid and all that. This comes up so often, not necessarily the, litigation of that, but how do you choose a good customer? Because it sounds like you guys probably, are able to cherry pick. You have a lot of opportunities come to your table. How do you go about cherry picking the ones that won't be a headache, and then dealing with ones that are when that becomes a thing?
I don't think you do. I don't think you get that opportunity. I think it's up to you to create your boundaries and your standards. Like what we do is we have, we do require a credit card, or we'll get a deposit and we'll work off the deposit. Or some
Okay.
companies that are big companies, you can look them up and you can see who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's, and don't get me wrong, like we chase work like everybody, right? It's not like, life's all roses. Yes. And then it's always a concern. Like there's no easy answer to that question. You have to be careful. You have to work with people. And hey, I've done it myself. I've had customers that like, oh well, just I'll send you the check tomorrow. I'll make the e-transfer, and they don't. And then you've got
Right.
a crew there, and you're working. The bill's growing. The bill's growing. The bill's growing. And then all of a sudden, they're into you for $20,000-$30,000, and you're going, well, hey, wait a minute, and you're stuck. I find myself stuck between trying to be a nice guy and be helpful, get the job done, and being committed to my workers to keep them working, because they want to work every day, right? And
Sure.
we don't want to say to the workers, oh, hey, you can't work tomorrow because the customer hasn't paid. Because what are they going to do? They're going to, do you have another job to send them to? If you do, fine, but if you don't, they're going to sit home, and they're not liking that. So it's really in the, I find, even like for myself, it's kind of the disciplining of yourself to say, hey, you know what? I'm cool with you running a bill of like $5,000, but beyond that, we're not going tomorrow.
Sure.
So these guys, yeah, it's not easy, because you get into big companies and they do run up a big bill, and you just have to, I think, analyze it, job by job, company by company, and set a limit for yourself, right? And I think, we were talking earlier about the difference between old school ways and current ways. And I think one of the benefits now is that it's accepted to say, hey, I want a credit card, or
Right.
I think that's a lot more accepted. And what I've done years ago, even before that was acceptable, is say to them, hey, like we have different payment plans. So if you want to, pay 50% up front, we'll give you a discount. Or if you want to, say, pay me, whatever terms you dream up, right? Like get a deposit, or 30, whatever you want to do, put them in an incentive in it for them.
Right. Yeah. It's got to be a double-sided, admissible, positive road. A lot of our clients, they get caught up in that. And I look at it, from our world, we're in marketing, so we get paid before we even start to work.
Yeah.
The terms are so key. And I have never thought of it doing it any other way. Like I've worked with vendors, and they'll get paid 30 days out. And I look at it and I go, guys, why don't you just set the frame from the get-go? This is a deposit amount. It's only 25% or 50% or something like that. Hey, we're very credible. We're going to get the job done. You guys want someone who's credible and can do this effectively. That's us. If you're not interested in that and you want to rip someone off or get the cheapest bid, it's not a fit. Of course, sometimes you could be a competitive bid, and that's what you aim for. You're not aiming to be the cheapest. Sometimes that just happens to be the case, but more often it's kind of a value. Hey, we're valuable. That doesn't mean we're cheap. That doesn't mean we're the most expensive always, but it means per dollar you're going to get the most efficiency, the best bang for your buck, and professionalism. So that's pretty good. Do you have any other last few things you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
Yeah, all I was going to say was that it's like, it's okay to get the money up front, and it's always has to be, on your mind. And I think that's where, not just generalizing in a whole bunch of different things, like we talked in the beginning about demo, excavation, and disposal, or whatever, tree service, whatever you want to wrap up into. I do everything, and don't take it on as like I got to be the cheapest. And it's always been the battle of the construction industry as a whole has always worked on a 30-day payment term. So you're kind of going against the grain of that. So you just kind of set up, like a like a friendly kind of, this is what I'm going to do for you, and this is just kind of how I'd like to be paid, and come up with some terms.
Right. And then there's always the world of public work. There's the world of private work, insurance work, etc.
Yeah, what's needed for that? You know, if you're working for government, you know, it's not going to be a problem getting paid. It's just how do you do the job and carry the money.
Right. Yeah. And how long the net is going to be. What is a normal net that you guys deal with in your world from a blended perspective? Is it the 30 days on average?
Yeah, it's 30 days. Some are 45, but mostly it's 30 days.
Would you guys ever take a job that's net 60 or net 90 if it was a great job, you know, good customer, that kind of thing? I'm sure you would try to negotiate maybe better terms, but if there's good jobs, is that something you guys see viable, or that's not a part of your
No, it's not part of my thing. No.
Okay. That's great. I love it. You're decisive. You're very clear line there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we do work for big companies, and a lot of it is the same thing. It's like, you know, and this again is where we have the luxury of being a specialized company, because when people call us, you know, we had a big company call us from the Yukon, and they were building a bridge, and they were stuck. They had a cofferdam built. They were working, you know, like 30 feet below the water line, and they had over poured the concrete by like, you know, 14 inches or 18 inches, and they had to take the concrete out. And it was on a Saturday. They called me and go, what can we do? So, you know, and first of all, said, this is, you know, how I would do it and what we can do. We could ship you up the ground. We rented them all the equipment. I sent up a guy as a consultant, and that was the first thing. Like, you have a credit card? And the guy's like, sure, here's my credit card. So the superintendent, you have a credit card.
Right. That's awesome. Okay. Because I know that is really a crux of the industry. And I think we're going to bring on a banker that I know from Chase Bank. We're obviously open to some specialists, perhaps off the podcast. We could talk about that. Would love to help fill that gap on the podcast and in this, you know, kind of community that we're building, because it is constantly something. I don't care how many years, you know, what sort of annual revenue. So many of our guests are citing that finances, while they're good at them, they set the right terms, they really focus on doing good business, things can still get tight, or float can be difficult.
It always does. And I mean, I would suspect that your banker is going to say, oh, come in and we'll set you up with the line of credit. Doesn't help. You know, the line of credit in the wrong place, right? You know, we have a saying here, and I'm always on my guys. Like, we have a acronym, is GTM. It's get the money.
Get the money. Okay.
Get the money.
It's like always
got the
closing
money,
ABC.
You're fine, right? It's always when you're chasing them. You know, construction has always been like that. It's kind of like a teeter-totter, you know, like when you're getting the job, they need you. They're so happy to get you on board and come in and do the work that they want you to do. So you're the hero. But then when you're done the job and they owe you the money, then you're the jerk trying to get the money.
Do you guys have any wisdoms? You know, obviously we alluded to the banker. Are there any products or services that do help close that gap that are out there that are decent? You know, good services or sources that can help with float and could help with getting paid quicker beyond a lawyer or beyond, you know, some banking instrument?
I don't think so. I think it really just comes back down to the individual. You know, like it's in how you let the teeter-totter kind of float, right? Like it's how much you want to let them get into you for.
Right. Okay. Yep. Always set the frame right.
It's a decision.
Okay. Yeah. Be to any of the audience, be like Dennis, where I asked, you know, would you consider a 60 or 90? He's like, no, it's not even on the table. Like, could be a great job. That's not for us. It's not a great job if it's like that. No matter how great of a job it is.
That's why we prefer the medium-sized jobs, you know, because they're more flexible. But everybody has to pick what fits their goal or their vision, right? Maybe some guys only want to work for governments. Maybe some guys only want to work in residential. Like everybody has their own space, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you know, just trying to find that happy medium if there ever is one. Like you said, everyone's different. Some are just pure, this is all they do. Okay, awesome. Well, this has been great. We're going to wrap up here unless you have any last.
No, that's super. Yeah. No, it was a great interview. Glad to be on.
All right. Well, thank you, Dennis. We're just going to wrap up the podcast here. Thank you guys for listening. Another episode of Demolition Success Secrets. Signing off. See you guys.
That's a wrap for this episode of Demolition Success Secrets. Stay tuned and subscribe for more explosive insights from our upcoming episodes. Until then, continue to blow up your demolition business and make the competition rubble in your path.